welcome on my first step ever. It is so exciting to be on a journey where you create yourself, you create your own mindset, you create your own path, and you have your own dreams, and how to achieve them is something which is so important but so interesting to discover along the way. But sometimes we do lose hope, we lose the interest, or maybe we are just so tired trying over and over again, looking at other people, that how are they doing it or how is it done, that we really forget the essence of why one achieves what they achieve is because they have the conviction in themselves and on their journey, and they're super focused and they take actions. So, on that note, that is exactly what we discuss on my first step ever podcast, and why it started is to look within and look into your journey and build that conviction. And that I do here by inviting such amazing personalities, guest speakers across the globe who have been able to achieve that by building their own conviction, maybe with some ups and downs of their own journey. Some may had the clarity from the very get go, or some figured it out as they walked along. But one thing common in all of them was an undying conviction in themselves and belief that they can do it. So please join me in welcoming one of such amazing guest speakers from the UAE this time. I'm so excited to welcome her, and I'm going to give her a special shout out because she's doing it the wee hours in the morning in UAE. Joining us all the way from Sharjah, Rukaiya Khan. Welcome on my first step ever.
Thank you, Ishani. I wouldn't have traded this time for anything else. I'm so excited for this conversation we have. Love your work, and it's such a pleasure to share and to just be in this conversation. So thank you for the opportunity.
It's my honor, and I'm so glad that you're here. We're starting on this particular episode on such a good note that I'm going to give a sneak peek about you to our listeners before we move on and just get into this interesting conversation, understanding who Rukaiya really is, how she built who she is today, the character, the integrity, and her own dreams and goals. So, today's speaker, as you know, is not just a speaker, a coach, or a trainer. She's a force of transformation driven by one powerful mission to change the world one smile at a time. Rukaiya Khan is the founder of Smiltastic. Now, I hope I'm pronouncing that right. An internationally honored change maker who leads people from chaos to clarity. And isn't that all that we need in life, to have a clarity? She proudly calls herself S.M.I.L.I.E, which is smile strategist. Because of her, transformation begins with communication, mindset, and human connection. Now, with over 25 years of experience working with words, Rukaiya is a master practitioner of neuro-linguistic programming, hypnosis, and timeline therapy, a PCC certified coach with International Coaching Federation, and a mindset trainer. And here's more to come. A two-time TEDx speaker who has taken the iconic red dot stage not once but twice. Now, there's so much in store in there for us to kind of really unpack, Rukaiya, not just your achievements and titles and what you have been really, kind of working towards, learning things, being certified, getting and doing those work over there, but really getting inside your mind today to understand and to help our listeners or people who are watching us really decode their own thought process so they can build that conviction. So, but as I said, beyond these titles and achievements, she's one woman army on a mission to give more to the world in a smile. So, Rukaiya, welcome on my first step ever, and to all my listeners and people who are watching us today. If you have not yet subscribed to this channel, my first step ever, do that now, because now we're getting into the really exciting part. Rukaiya, my first question to you is, we would love, love, love to go back to the time when you were this little girl who was just growing up. Where were you born, and what was the mindset of the people that you were surrounded with while you were growing up?
Hmm. Great question. I was born in India, Hyderabad, and I was born to the eldest children of the family. So my mom is the eldest, my father is the eldest, and somewhere I think at the corner of everybody's mind was the expectation of a boy showing up, and there I came along. That's it. But I mean, yes, the mindset was very different. However, I did receive as much love and as much caring from my parents as possible. And so that was my upbringing. At around 9 months of age is when we shifted from India to Kuwait. And then, of course, from a joint family, began the nuclear family of just the three of us. And therefore life took place.
Actually, we would love to kind of understand the first decade of your life up until like the 10 years, I would say, while you were you were in Kuwait and you were growing up over here into a nuclear family. I suppose that that's what you were kind of born into because you really didn't have much time in those 9 months, really understand what, a joint family life is like. So would love to kind of understand how your journey was while you were kind of growing up in Kuwait. How did that first few years of the decade really kind of, made you or formed your thought process at that time for your own self?
All right. Fair enough. Growing up, oh, okay then. I should have kind of prepared myself for this. Single child, empath, always available to listen. And this just meant I was going out of my way, whether it was to support my friends or unconsciously supporting my parents as well, work through their struggles. Like I said, the elder child in both sides of the family. So they came with their set of responsibilities for their siblings, and those responsibilities leading to a lot of tug of war and things happening at home where it wasn't really pleasant. However, me being me would always kind of take a back seat in terms of never put myself and my needs out there. And however, always be available to the others and always thinking that, if you were giving more, if you were listening more, if you were protecting more, perhaps you'd be good enough. So that's how my foundation as a child was. Whether it was sharing my lunchbox at school, whether it was sharing a year if someone was not feeling very well, or I was feeling sad, I'd be the agony aunt, always listening. And it's really interesting how I remember this the smallest and tiniest of things about my friends. So even now at age 50, when we meet up and I talk to my friends about, oh, do you remember this about that person? And they will be like, no, we don't. Do you remember this? I mean, at that time, just felt so important in that conversation that it stayed with me. So this is where how I grew up. Just a very good listener.
And I think that is one of the best quality a human can have because there are a lot of mouth to speak, but there are very less who really listens to people. And then first of all, you don't look 50 at all. So if you would have not told us your age, we would have never guessed that.
Oh,
Context, I think as you mentioned that your parents, both your parents were the eldest of the family, and then there comes a lot of responsibility. And I'm sure, as you mentioned, that they were fulfilling the responsibilities while also raising a family. Given that you have seen that sort of a behavior, that responsible behavior from the very beginning, and as you mentioned, I think slowly and steadily you became an observer from what I have been understanding, because there was lots happening in both of your parents' life. You were observing, you were absorbing as well, and you were kind of becoming that person who would be able to be able to provide a ground or a platform to any other of your friends or family members to just come and open to you. And when you did that, as you mentioned, that you were an empath, you still are. That kind of shows. What was that, while you were entering your teenage phase? How did that dynamic at home, dynamics at your school, how was that shaping you up as a teenager? How was that journey, that period for you?
hmm. It was it was age 12 when we read Lucy Gray in class.
Okay.
It's such a clear memory. Lucy Gray, Wordsworth, I believe, wrote it, and he talks about her wandering into the woods. He talks about loss. He talks about how a simple incident is just so beautifully put into poetry. And for me, that just kind of, I don't know, that just created a switch inside. And I very, with a lot of excitement, run up to my teacher and I say, "This is so beautiful. I was just trying to just express how lovely it is." And she says, "Yes, but that's Wordsworth, and so because he was touched in such a way, he wrote about it. And that's not something we can do." And I'm like, "Really?" But I go back home, and there was something that I kind of wanted to pour out on paper, and I did. I wrote something down and I took to her the other day. And for me, that was just me acknowledging my feelings. That was me putting pen to paper and saying, if something touches you, you can write about it, is what I gathered. And so
Mm-hmm.
I did. And I went back to her and I showed her the writing. And she said, I take back my words. We can do it too. And that for me was the start of my affair with words, I'd like to say. Because post that, what I found an outlet to express my feelings. I found an outlet to not essentially have to go speak to somebody else about what I'm feeling, but actually put pen to paper and release. And so began that the writing poetry. I began to write, and the Gulf War happened. You might have heard, may not have heard of it perhaps. 1990 was when Iraq invaded Kuwait, and what was my home for 14 years suddenly was under attack. And we needed to figure out a way out of there, obviously. And so we did. So it took us a journey that would have taken at least would have taken less than 20 hours, because those are the times where you didn't have direct flights from Kuwait to Hyderabad. You need to take a stop in Mumbai, so Bombay at the time. So I that journey for us, Ishani, took 20 days plus, because we
Wow.
stayed in the camp. So that was again at age that happened at 15. So I started writing the poems. We moved from Kuwait to Hyderabad. Again, from that space of just being with three people in the house, we were then 27 people under one roof. And it was a culture shock. It was me withdrawing further into my cocoon, saying, no, there's already so much happening for my parents. I can't really put myself out there. Also, the whole safety and security of a routine that had been established as a child was disrupted, and I had to fit into this new culture where I would start using the road transport, the bus system, have to fit into a school of grade 10, imagine, where everybody's towards has been in that particular school from the beginning up until grade 10, and there I show up as an alien. And it was a lot of course, I didn't speak English the way everybody else did, had a different this level of confidence, which the teachers liked, but the students didn't. It was challenging, to say the least.
Uh, I think firstly I like to say that this was quite
Yeah,
quite a
yeah.
unique situation that you were in, because I think around that time I wasn't expecting this. Yeah, I'm sorry that you kind of had to go through that in war experience, because I think we are kind of witnessing that even now, even in today's time, which is not a great feeling to kind of see. You are living a certain kind of life, and there are people out there, kind of starving for even the basic necessities. That is such a tender timeline or age that a person can be in their life, and having to go through such I don't know, groundbreaking event in your life, witnessing the war, being around that in the vibration and that scenario, it is very, very heartbreaking, and also kind of it breaks down one person emotionally, mentally, obviously, because your sense of belonging, sense of home, everything is uprooted. And I can't really imagine that when your parents had to take the decision to kind of move back, and you had no idea what's coming in for you over there. There was a period in between that you mentioned about 20 odd days when you were commuting from one point to other. What did that teach you the most, or what has it left with you with till date in your life?
Mhm. So we were in the Amman camps, the refugee camps that were there. So these really dusty, dirty, green colored tents that had been created, and we had those plasticky type of floor mats on which you just walk in, and that's all there is. There's nothing else in the camp. You walk in, and that's your space to stay. We stayed there for about 10 days. Also, the journey from Kuwait to Basra and then from Basra to Amman was a bit of a drive, driving through the desert. And then from Amman and the camps, we also to board a flight that would take us from there to India. And then after reaching India, the drama of getting from Mumbai, Bombay to Hyderabad itself was, we stayed at the platform for about a day and a half because things weren't settled, the tickets weren't allotted properly once we reached India. So the whole journey for me was a lot of wait and watch. Mum used to always say this, when we would be going out somewhere and stuff like that. She would, and I'd ask, "Where are we going? What are we doing?" And her instant comeback would be wait and watch. And that's really what it was. Now if when I share it with you, that's what's coming to my mind, because our passports were misplaced while we were in camp. The entire team, we were about 20-25 of us in one bus heading to we did taking that journey. And our unfortunately the passports of our group was misplaced, or it had been set aside, and we kind of lost, we weren't in series. That's why it took so long as well. What it taught me was to be patient and to wait and watch.
I think that's the biggest takeaway for me right now of what your mother said. As you are taking me through your, that 20-day period journey, recollecting those days with us, and thank you so much for taking us through that. Definitely not easy to kind of probably even think of those days and kind of relive, but that's such a beautiful thing that your mom told you, that wait and watch. And I
Yes.
think this kind of
I'm kind of gonna have to interrupt you there, because another thing that comes to my mind is, after spending that time at the railway station, because obviously the facilities, everything was weird over there. Literally sleeping on the railway station, and then a relative of ours scooped us, took us to a hotel where we stayed, showered, changed, and then took the flight. Trust me, when we walked in, the look the manager gave us, it was almost like, who's this walking into this place? Because obviously we were tired. We did not look like we belonged there. And we were walking up the stairs to his property. And the way he looked at us was so belittling. I will always remember that. I will always remember that. That people, when they look at you, they don't consider what you might have gone through, because I'm sure, and I'm not blaming him, because not ever in his wildest imagination would he know that for the past so many days what we've been going through mentally, physically, emotionally. But the look has stayed with me.
I think I should definitely thank you for kind of opening up and sharing this particular incident, because it helps a lot of us, people who are listening to us, watching us, even myself, to be very careful, in kind of rushing into judging people in the situations, just by the look of things or the way they speak or the words that they use, because we never know where they are coming from, because that is not in their control. I think this is such a beautiful thought to keep in their mind, that you have done everything in your power. You are going by what next actions that you can do, but the rest you have to just wait and watch. And I'm kind of very very sad to hear, that you still remember that look, because that means that that has somewhere in your heart, or left an impression of how they may have made you feel. But from that point onwards, how did that journey start for you from there? Could you talk to us through that journey of, how did you start probably adjusting yourself or creating your own world over here?
All right. I think my poetry helped me a lot, because it was my biggest refuge. So the few years that I was there, my poems helped me kind of ground myself. Again, being a good listener was the skill set I really, really heavily relied on. I'd spend a lot of time in that. Not essentially a bookworm, but it helped, because if I wasn't in my books, I'd have to be with everybody else, and feel out of place. At least the books gave me a sense of a refuge, or a sense of belonging, a purpose for that matter. And so I carried on with that.
What was that experience shaping you into, in terms of what did that do to you, your confidence for yourself, your own self image? How was that building, breaking, shaking, making around that point in time, if you can tell us about that?
Um, Ishani, As a child, I was very introvert. I was very quiet, and so when it comes to confidence, it was in minus. I'm sorry to disappoint you, but fact is that I barely had any confidence. I barely could take any decisions because that's how I was brought up. Mum was very dominating, so she made major choices for me. Like I said, I didn't have a say in whether I wanted to be a doctor. It was just decided. But did I actually eventually fall through, go through? No, I didn't. Because at the time, and even now in India, you need to pay chunks and chunks of donation if you haven't kind of acquired that top few seats that are for free, or, this thing. Being the person I was and knowing this financial situation of my dad, I at that time made a choice, a very conscious choice, that while I had scored a good enough seat, a good enough percentage or rank, I decided that because if I were to pursue this seat with this rank, I would be paying an X amount of money, which could be quite a bit. I decided I will take a break year and I will focus only on my studies, and I will, kind of write the exam again, the entrance exam again. And that could have gone well, unfortunately, or whatever. Mom said, no, you shouldn't be wasting your year. You need to start, join graduation, BSc. And of course, it couldn't be the baseline subjects because it had to be the top tier. And we take up two majors, and we think, not we, she thinks that two majors, and still she's going to work through her medical entrance preparation, etc., and whatever. And God says, "Ah, really? Let me throw in jaundice. Let me throw in some illnesses so that she can really, work her way through it." And that first year of graduation was the toughest.
Hmm.
My health wasn't keeping up, and neither was I able to work as hard as I thought I could, because I had two majors, for heaven's sakes. So moving forward, I realized that decisions aren't really my thing. Everybody always telling me what would be good for me, what would be this, what would be that. So my mindset was that of, when it came to a decision, I would always look up to somebody else and not look within. I didn't know what I liked, and that's basically the foundation of who I was. So when somebody asks me where, about myself and where about I've grown up, I say I spent my childhood in Kuwait. However, I grew up in UAE.
Wow. And I think that part of grew up is something that we're yet to kind of dive into, understand how did you really grow up in being that confident person who makes their own decision. So given that you mentioned that you had minus confidence and now you are kind of speaking on the world stages, that's definitely not a disappointment, Rukaiya. It's quite a story for us to hear right now. And I think what you brought out is such a valid point, given like whichever country you're in, background you're from. It really depends who's making decisions for yourself. Either it's you, if you have those circumstances where you have to kind of, make decisions for yourself, whether good or bad, or you are empowered to make the decision for yourself, or you are not given the chance of making a decision for yourself. There are many very scenarios, but you said something very important over there, which is you did not know who you are, you did not know yourself. And that is exactly where the confidence stems from, knowing yourself, who you are, what you want, what you like, what you don't like, and putting those likings and dislikes, whatever it is, into action so you can see a proof of confidence. And that's where, the actions build your confidence. Given that that journey was yet to start in your life, I would love to kind of understand when you realized that, and probably the point of frustration, as I can kind of sense, was coming very soon. How did that journey begin for you over there?
Okay. Point of frustration did not come very soon. Point of frustration came about 5 years into the marriage. So, you know, um, I I think history repeated when I brought in my daughter to UAE when she was nine months old. Literally
Oh,
9 months.
wow.
Again, and therefore I say history repeats. Came in with her and then had my son 3 years later. He was 8 months old when, we generally used to socialize a lot. We used to always have friends come over, and every weekend would be busy for me. And it was one of those afternoons where I was standing in front of a sink doing dishes once again, because we had had a very successful evening with friends. And I'm standing there doing the dishes and I'm thinking, there must be more to life than diapers and dishes. And you know, at that point, obviously, no NLP, no personal development, nothing at all, but some kind of an innate wisdom that made me ask that question. I didn't complain about life. I just looked for what else is possible. And in that moment, having picked up my cup of tea, sat down with the newspaper, opened it up, and I found out information about the Dubai Press Club. And remember, I had this whole bunch of poetry that I had written. There was
Mm-hmm.
like 52 of them by now. And so I do the math in my head and I say 52 means 52 weeks in a year. Maybe I can approach a newspaper and ask them if they would publish it. So it'll be like a weekly, a 1 year kind of a thing, maybe. You never know. So I call up the press club and I asked them, and the lady, her name was Sally. She picks up the phone and she says, "We don't publish poetry. However, you might be interested to connect with a group of ladies called the Dubai Ladies Club and Dubai Ladies Writing Club. Sorry, and they contribute articles to the local newspaper on a weekly basis, and maybe that's something you'd be interested." She passes on a number. I call up, and the rest is history because that group of women, God bless them, gave me the opportunity to write for the local newspaper. I wasn't a trained journalist, nothing. However, they would have weekly meetings where topics would be discussed, writing exercises would be done, feedback would be given, and it just became my tribe. And I started writing very simplistic pieces. And then as I grew in that space, I started getting assignments from other, like the
Wow.
magazine, newspaper, and other international magazines and stuff like that. And it started growing therefrom.
It's exciting, and I want to kind of go back two steps over here because I think while you were mentioning about how it really began for you, I think when the question popped up, there's much to life, there's more than what I'm doing right now. Your instinct went to your poetry. Now, what I have been thinking along the way when we were having this conversation since the very beginning, since the time you told me, writing became your refuge, or writing became a place of your soul, is something where you feel really connected and free. I had a thought that maybe that's what you would love to kind of pursue in your profession, even in graduation, something professionally, but you chose something else. Can you walk us through that, why you never kind of really thought of making writing a profession to begin with, and if there was never a choice, how did you really manage that?
So you know when you have a horse running a race, you put blinders on.
Hmm?
I had blinders on.
Okay.
Those blinders was my mom.
Okay.
She it was more like, this is all that you're going to do in life. It was never an option. I was never, there was no awareness that because it was either science, math, or arts, commerce. And for me, I was really bad with numbers, not interested in history. Social studies was a subject where prior to the exam I would have a fever because I hated the subject, and so I knew that was not an option. I knew I didn't want to take math because I don't like numbers. And so the next best was obviously science, which anyway was a given because she needs to become a doctor. So it was like written in her world that this is what I'm going to do. So that's
So
it.
something that,
Yeah,
sorry, I think something that you never questioned in your head either.
never. Excuse me question my mother. I still don't. So that's not done. But jokes apart, got married, and then when it was a few, I mean, it was like I didn't instantly, right after marriage, I did not follow my husband to UAE. It took me a little while. So I had, by that time I had already had a baby and I'd already completed my graduation, and I didn't want to waste my time. Remember, mom is all about not wasting time. So she said, why don't you take up something for your masters? Now, that was my time when I said, I can't take up science because my daughter is really small. So I can't take up science because that would mean for me, I have be there, laboratory work and this and that. So I can't do that. Let me take up literature. So I did my MA in literature from Open University, but I did. Yeah. So before I came to UAE is when I did it.
So that kind of now builds the bridge in my head, that how things kind of really came about. And I think our very innate passions, our very innate strengths and love, they follow us through somehow, even if we are not, looking at them. And this is what I see in your journey. So while now we are in Kuwait and you started this amazing journey of yours, you started getting a lot of offers to kind of, write. Have how did things unfold for you from there professionally? How was it for you?
Okay, so I at this point I'm in UAE, and the writing, like I said, weekly meetings with these ladies was very, very helpful for me. And I just needed, it was neighborhood news. So the column was called Neighborhood News, and you would write about what was there happening around. You'd have to find out about a few things. Sometimes someone would come up with an idea and say, hey, listen, I don't have the bandwidth to write about this. Can someone take it up? And I'd obviously be always ready to do that. And I was very mindful of the fact that my work should not interrupt my children's education. Very, very flexible that way. If they had some kind of exams or something, I would kind of take a step back from my writing role and then just be there for them, and then again step up again. This was working really nicely. The writing was being observed by bigger editors, the magazine guys, and everything. And so that's where the writing kind of started evolving. 2010, Gulf News Friday magazine was doing a special edition, and they were writing about silence. They were writing about things that bring an element of surprise into people's lives, speed into people's life. And that's when I wrote about firewalking. I wrote about firewalking was when I was introduced to an NLP coach. And coincidentally, for that particular feature, I had to do 5 interviews, and out of five, three spoke about NLP. And that's where the transition kind of happened about leaning into what could NLP be, and why are these three people out of the five speaking so differently and holding my attention? I want some of that. So 2011 was when I went on to do a basic practitioner, a 7-day immersive program, and learned about hypnosis, hypnotherapy, actually, timeline therapy, and neurolinguistic programming.
I'm actually listening to you very intently, and I was trying to kind of connect some dots, what your mom told you back then, but some of it has really come back in your life to help you.
Yes.
Is, kind of following things in a certain way, and which is to not waste your time, which is to keep doing what you can and keep striving for more. I like the fact that, a simple advice has stayed with you, and you've been a learning machine since the very beginning. I'm sure there have been many lows as well, which we have not been able to touch upon that, and I think that's completely fine, because what we really are looking for is to kind of understand your takeaways, which I can hear in your journey right now. But one thing I want to ask, when you got that chance of interviewing those people, and it's like, when something has to reach you, it kind of, shows up in your life many times, so that it really, gets your attention, but you were also innately being pulled towards it. From being a minus confident person, in your words, what do you think led you to be a person who's now interviewing five really, experts in the field, or, writing, putting your hands up every time that I'll write, I'll do this? How do you think that transition came about, or what made that confidence really, spur in you?
Standing at that sink, Ishani, I was very well aware that I have a daughter who has started school. I was also aware that I have a son who is at 8 months. And I did not want to be a role model who could be walked all over. I wanted to stand up for myself, and I wanted to do a little bit more with the life I was given. It's as simple as that. Every time I raised my hand to do a piece was because I wanted to push myself further. And I was enjoying what I was doing. And somewhere within me is this quality to make things happen. And I say this with utmost humility. Jagdeep Singh was in town, and he was here for a book launch. I love the newspaper. Every time I open it, gives me something. Not the news, but something to kind of fall into. And I open the newspaper and I see he's in town for a book launch and at a particular at a particular store. So I say, great. I reach out to them. I tell them that I want to do an interview, and I say, I at the time didn't drive even. I said, you need to arrange transport for me, and I think they were quite appreciative of the enthusiasm, and they arranged for it all. And I reached there with two children, and
So beautiful.
I do an interview of him, and he was like, meet me again sometime later, and then we'll do an interview again, and I will remember you always for your enthusiasm. And I did coincidentally meet him again a few years later, but that's another story for another time. What I'm trying to tell you here is, it didn't let things stop me. And it wasn't like a plan I had, or I had resources. I made the best with what I had. And I took my
Absolutely.
children along. My daughter at the moment is into public relations. She did a double major with journalism and public relations, and that's because somewhere along the line, coming with me, watching me work, holding my notepads and the little things that I used to carry along, did shape her. And I'm so proud of her for what she's doing right now in life and for the person she's become. So, as children, you observe, you learn, and you think, okay, do I want to go that route? Do I want to take a route of my own? Something that's different. While mom was dominating, my foundation, my baseline of values comes from papa, who was silent, who was the listener, who was the empath in the family, and always. And there would be long conversations I would have with him. While with mom, I would just listen and take it in. But with Papa, there were these long conversations where he'd just talk about himself. About his childhood and about how life had changed for him after his dad's passing. And all of these things somewhere shaped me and made me the person that I am. And so moving forward, yes, things started unfolding, but I think one thing that I don't know why, but I always did was I said yes to life. I said yes to opportunities. And that's also how the TEDx happened. Because for me, I wasn't a trained speaker at the time. So if you look at my very first TEDx, 2016, I'm timid, I'm scared, my body language is shouting, scared. But I am speaking, I am sharing because I had a story. I had something that I wanted to take to the stage. I wanted to let people know that if, stop cribbing and complaining about life and take ownership. And I think that for me was a big one, because if you can take ownership of what you have and say thank you for it and move forward, take a step forward, the way unfolds.
And for all of us today, what you're saying, I really see, a fighting spirit in you, and taking everything in your stride, learning from things. There have been certain times where you've respected your elders and kind of, taken up life their way, but still made something out of for your own self on your own terms as the life unfolded going further. So, and I think you mentioned something very interesting about your dynamics with your father, and it's so amazing to see, where the two very opposite sides of coins, where someone is kind of speaking to you, telling you things, giving you advice, guiding you. How has that shaped your journey today?
While one person was taking decisions for me, the other was only sharing. He was only sharing his journey, but in that moment, it just felt like he was telling me a story. But what I realized was it was shaping who I am. I was, and it was also an outlet for him to kind of just be himself, vulnerable, broken, maybe, and yet so strong. They're your first hero, always will be. So, him shaping me moving forward, putting my values in place, and has helped me at this time where I am. He passed on in 2017. So, to fill those shoes has been the hardest for me. However, for the last 2 years, that's what I was doing. When mom fell ill and her health was really, really fragile, I dropped everything that I was doing and I was with her by her side, literally building back her strength. And it was helpful for me to have had those moments with Papa, because those helped me understand their relationship with her so much better. And so now when I was on my own, I was able to do things in a very different way, which I probably would never been able to do so. So he continues to guide me.
This is so beautiful. I think he continues to live on through you. And I think what's more interesting is how you speak about them, and especially the bond that you share with your father. I would really like to kind of touch upon one aspect of your life because I think from so far what we have discussed, what I kind of come to know about you, and as you talk about being a smile strategist, just before that, I wanted to kind of ask you, I'm sure everyone faces an extreme low period in their life at some point in time. If you have in your life, kind of faced an extreme low phase, how do you think you have, if you can share, how did you come out of it? While we are in it, it's so challenging. So I think people who are listening to us today, be it in their professional life or the personal life, what really grounds us and what really holds us really tight in the situation is how we manage our own thought process and how we tackle or handle those situations. How did you process the lowest point in your life while you were going through it, and how did you bounce back from it?
Hmm. Thank you. A pivotal question. Uh, 2016, TEDx happened. I started getting invited universities, schools to present and talk about happiness, stress management, and things like that using the SMILE strategy. Because as I progressed, I realized it's a mindset training tool that can be used very effectively in the education space and otherwise also. Life seemed wonderful. I thought, this is what I'm going to do. My children were moving out for university. I said, great, they move out, and this is what I'll do full fledged. You make plans. So you see, man plans and God decides. October, I take my son. We move. I mean, he's going to study in Brisbane. We go there. We drop him off, and that's the time Papa gets admitted in hospital. Here's a man who's never been ever admitted in hospital, but he has been moved to hospital. He had a cough that was going on, and at every point, Mom has been unwell. I've kind of I've gone home, spent a weekend there, maybe a 3-4 days, brought her back, and then just come back. Build up their energy levels, and then just come back. With Papa, the cough was consistent, but in my head, I don't know, somewhere I thought, let me finish this phase of my life. I need, because Ida left in July, and then my son Abdullah was to leave in October. So I said November was when I had planned to, kind of everything would settle down and go and spend a good chunk of time with both of them. So to answer your question, first the daughter leaves, then the son leaves, and that whole identity of my mom and my world revolving all around them is shaken up. And I think, and I'm already kind of a little shaken up at this point, because the whole plan of I will do this and this is it's kind of beginning. I'm kind of beginning to laugh at myself, saying, "Do you really think so?" And I'm in Australia when I found out he moves from the ward to the ICU, and things are just getting critical. I move and I take a flight, go to Hyderabad, and in less than a day, like I'll reach at 1, and by evening that day I lost him. So that was the
I'm so
lowest.
sorry to hear that. Yeah,
Yeah. So that for me was the lowest. Ishani, nothing prepares you for it. And
absolutely.
I'm standing there, not knowing what just happened. And I'm standing there, and everybody's telling me to be strong for my mom, and my own feelings have just been rubbish and kind of brushed under the rug, because you're the only child. You need to take care of her. She's broken. She's scattered. You need to gather her. You need to be strong. And even if those pieces of her are going to cut through you and you're going to bleed, you're just going to continue to serve. And so I did. I did that for a month and a half. I stayed with Ma. I did whatever needed to be done, and I came back to UAE. And I saw myself up until Feb. I was kind of like, I had I'm somebody who plans ahead. Okay, so my whole thing was I will drop my son, come back, and I'll focus on work. So I'd lined up interviews, I'd lined up things to do, projects and stuff, and all of those started coming to me. And we need you to finish this up. We need you to write this piece. We need you to speak at this event. And I'm like, I'm not ready for it. Some places I couldn't do that. Some places I had to. So some places I wouldn't answer calls. But to cut a long story short, I was doing things, yet I was not doing them because my heart was not in it. And in April, I remember my children were meeting up in Perth. My son was flying from Brisbane to Perth for the Easter break for 2 weeks. And I felt I want to go back. I want to be with them. Because here in UAE, what would happen was it would be 4 in the evening, 5, and I would still be in bed because I was struggling. I didn't want to face the world. And I go to Perth, and over there on a bus ride, my son kind of shakes me up and he says, Ma, what have you been up to? Like literally. 18-year-old asking you, looks you straight in the eyes, and Ma, what have you been up to? I say, don't speak to me like that. I'm your mother. So he said, Ma, all of that is fine. What about accountability? And that's when I realized, okay, he has a point. So I think of what I have with me. Remember, I'm that person who makes the best with what I have. So I say, take a step back. I have enough time because I'm there with my kids. I take a step back and I think of what are some things that I can do, and I go to my Instagram where I had posted quotes of mine, and I make a itinerary of it, and I realized that there are 550 quotes. Initially, I thought I'd make a perpetual calendar and get it over with, but I said no. Let's do this differently. I come back home here, and when I begin to see that I'm falling back in that spiral of, not wanting to face the world, I said, no, this is not what I'm going to do. So I take that list, and I show up every single day, 2 p.m., to do a live. I didn't
Incredible.
know. I didn't have an end goal. When I started, I didn't have an end goal. It was more like I'm doing this for myself. So I sit on the sofa with a selfie stick and I'm doing my live. That was 1st of May 2018. Flash forward 30th of July 2022, 1,551 days later is when I closed that project. I showed up every single day. Come rain, come shine, come tears, come sweat, come anything. I would show up. I would be raw. I would present. And that's how I built up myself back again.
Wow, what a story of comeback. I think, Rukaiya, you have some solid foundation. And I think something very beautiful that I just kind of realized in your journey is while you were growing up, I think your parents played such an important role in shaping who you are. And then there was a period when you played the biggest part in your life in shaping who you are by making those decisions. And now it is your children who played a very big role in your life to help you come back into who you are. So I think it's so beautiful, all the people that you were surrounded with and you have in your life who you have placed the utmost importance, respect, and love in, and how they are building you and how they're supporting you, how you are, supporting yourself and them as well. Such a beautiful thing to kind of notice, realize, and understand that, that you walk together, you rise together, you share your story. When your son asked that, what have you been up to? And your first reaction was that, hey, you can't ask me that, I'm your mom. But then you took a beat and you were open to letting him question you, and you being you did take that thing, that okay, let me think and answer that, or let me break that wall of you being my child, I'm being your mother. So I think that takes a different kind of an open mindset altogether to look at other person as a person and just kind of understand that what are they trying to kind of tell you. So it's very beautiful, Rukaiya. Your journey has been so inspiring in so many ways in different phases of your life. Thank you so much, firstly, for opening up. I always say this to our guests because it is not easy to be vulnerable and to open up about your most challenging phase of your life, and even the most happiest phase of someone's life, because that also gives us a lot of pressure It builds pressure, it builds a lot of fear. It's like, what's next? Will I be able to beat this, or something of that sort? How you sustain your success is also another thing altogether. But given that you're now back on your feet and you've done so much amazing things, you have never really given back, given into situations. You have only sort of either bounced back from it or just went ahead with what you knew. I would love to kind of, wrap up this conversation today with what you have been teaching people. So I
Hmm.
would love to kind of listen more about, what do you do as a smile strategist and what's next for you?
Thank you. What I do for people as a smile strategist is I help them have better conversations in their head, first of all. A lot of the results we have in our life are due to what we say to ourselves. So, for instance, that little girl in Kuwait who was struck by the Gulf War could have given up, especially when she was placed in an alien school, and everything around her had changed. I could have just crumbled myself, but I kept going. What is the story you're telling yourself? The smile helps you see that better. It helps you with your leadership. It helps you with your relationships, your productivity, and things like that. And it starts with gratitude. Very recently, I did my second TEDx talk. I did it just last month, actually. And that TEDx talks about growth. The acronym that I introduced there is growth. And even that starts with gratitude because, like I said, I make the most with what I have. I do not complain about other things. I think that's my superpower. Wherein anything that life throws at me I look at it and I say, okay, you threw this at me. Now this is what I'm going to do with it. But it doesn't happen instantly. You need to give it time. So even for growth to happen, the TEDx talk, it kind of growth, the acronym comes from the journey of the 1551 days. It talks about how consistency creates growth. So these are the two main elements that I bring into a conversation when I am in a space of coaching or corporate training, etc. And of course, the ICF rules and regulations of coaching is also something that I heavily rely on. But yes, when you're working with me, a smile is something I definitely give you, and from the smile comes growth.
Absolutely amazing. And that is such a great note on which we are wrapping this episode on, Rukaiya, because I think from where we started, from what a little girl kind of grew into this amazing person who's doing what is doing, there's so much meaning behind what you're doing. There's so much, well placed intention, a life lived, an experience, I think a bag full of experiences, which makes you quite the person to do what you're doing today,
Thank you.
because it only means that you are definitely equipped with those mental, emotional, and experiential tools that can really help uplift, empower people who come in your, maybe in your, under your wings, or work with you. So I will definitely leave a link about you in the show notes for whoever is interested, kind of connect with you. And I am very sure people who are listening to us, somewhere in our conversation, at some part of the story, it must have resonated with them, and I hope it has clicked for some
I
people. But before we take your leave, I always request my guest speakers to leave our listeners with the quote or a saying that they really resonate with. And if there's anything that you would like to add, please feel free to.
Thank you so much. I have a quote of mine, Ishani, that says, "The concept of perfection is flawed." I will repeat that. The concept of perfection is flawed. So often in life, we are looking for perfection. We are waiting till we are ready. We want the right resources, the right people, the right amount of money to begin something. Don't. Because when you're looking for perfection, you'll constantly just be looking for it. Look for purpose and keep moving forward.
Love that. The concept of perfection is flawed. What a great way to end this particular amazing conversation with Rukaiya Khan today. Thank you so much for being on this particular virtual studios of my first time ever. I'm so glad that this story is being, kind of told on this platform, where what is so important is to help our listeners and everyone who's watching us today understand that your own journey is your own unique journey, and for you to make it wonderful, to make the sense out of it, and to keep working on it, to build conviction in yourself, and to keep your close ones really close and to always look out for each other. Thank you so much, Rukaiya, for teaching us so many things today in such a short span of time. Wishing you much luck in whatever you do ahead. Thank
Same
you.
here. Thank you so much. And you've been an amazing host and a beautiful listener. I highly appreciate that about you. Thank you and wishing you the
Coming,
best.
thank you. That coming from another amazing listener, it's quite a compliment. To all my listeners out there, as I always say, that start believing in yourself and keep believing in yourself. See you until next time. Please do give ratings and please do write your comments. And you can directly reach out to me on my first step ever _IN. That's my Instagram handle. A little about myself. I have always loved performing on stage, acting, speaking, and just emoting myself. So I use these mediums different ways so that I can connect with people, help them, empower them, infotain them, which is to inform them and entertain them. If you would like to collaborate for any opportunities, more than welcome to connect with me on my Instagram handle. Thank you.